My name is Erik de Haan. I work in two places. I'm the director of the Center for Coaching, of Executive Coaching in Ashridge, and I'm also professor of organization development in the VU University Amsterdam. So yeah, that's me.
That's you. And the first curious question is, how come coaching became such a key issue in your professional life? What brought you there?
Okay, well, I went from a small consultancy firm. I was a partner in an OD firm in Amsterdam up to 2002, and then I went to what I found a very large business school in England, and I felt pretty soon that I needed to specialize. I needed to, confess myself to just one application. So I slowly became Mr. Coaching in Ashridge. I think it was a lot to do with the size of that place. And there's maybe one other reason, and that is I think, OD, organization development, which is changing organizations from within, it is a little bit, let's call it chauvinistic with an euphemism. So most companies look for consultants who are similar to them. And I found, especially in the early period in England, I found that not many organizations wanted to hire me as a consultant because I was different. My English was different, my culture was different, and I'm only slightly different from the English. So there is that component in OD, and I found that less in coaching, that problem.
Okay, that's interesting. So these days, where is coaching most impactful, do you think? Because there are different approaches to coaching. Either you think it's important or you think it's kind of a fluffy thing. Where is it most impactful?
I don't know. I think, yeah, when there is an honest engagement and an honest effort from especially from the side of the client, but also from the side of the coach, then it can have a very high impact in many places. But of course, the kind of small scale coaching space can be the only space or one of the only spaces where a very powerful person gets some truth being spoken to him or her. So especially at the top of organizations, I think coaching can have this beneficial effect of challenging leaders safely.
Safely? What does that mean?
Well, because the space is safe, they've chosen to submit themselves to coaching, and they are there in a room with the coach and nobody else. And they can trust that the coach won't tell anybody else what what is going on. So it's a relatively safe space to be challenged.
Are there some prerequisites for the coaching to be effective? What does it take on the part of coachee? In other words, may I be interested in a coaching relationship, for example, and not be a good candidate for some reason?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah. No, I think you need to really be interested in people and care about people, and that's even more important than that you can be fearless. The fact that you really want to help the person that you work with. So I speak a lot nowadays about love over fear. So what you see in coaching is that usually at the beginning of the session, even in this podcast, in the beginning, there's a bit of nervousness, a little bit of fear. And then when we get on, when we speak, when we share things, we overcome this fear. And there is a kind of sharing, and that's I call this love. So you often see in sessions and in relationships that love overcomes the fear. But it means for the coach that they should really be, of that kind of nature, that they want to help the other person. If they don't have that basic, and some people do not have that basically in their personality, that they want to help, they want to be of service, they want to, align themselves with another person, then you shouldn't be a coach, I think. And the other thing is maybe that you are willing to lower your levels of fear, that you're not, hiding away from your fear, and that you want to become fearless. If that makes sense.
It does, definitely.
Can you coach anybody now on the other side? Like here we talked about the coach and then about the coachee. Are there some prerequisites for that relationship to function?
Yeah, people often talk about coachability. No, that means, are you able to benefit from coaching? Yeah, there is that, but I don't know. It's I find in my practice that I can work with more and more different clients, and that it's okay. So even somebody who is on the surface not very coachable because they're, for example, very cynical about coaching, they don't believe in it. As long as they take the time and sit down with you, then they can, and it's that safe space, and over time they can perhaps overcome their cynicism. So I don't have an immediate answer about coachability. I think, they are already a responsible person in an organization. They are already a leader, a manager. Why can't they also be a good coachee? I think that's, should be okay. And if they're not a good coachee, then the coach can help them to, to get better at that, to lower their own levels of fear gradually.
As when you are sitting there in the chairs, then you have a chance to reach out and inspire and connect with the coachee. Do you have a specific approach, or is it more intuitive, depending on the dynamic between you and the CEO or the coachee?
Yeah, no, I use what I've learned. So I think I do have a particular approaches. Yeah. But it's you have techniques, you have interventions, you have approaches, and you have an overall sort of philosophy of coaching. And I think I have all those things more or less
in back of your mind, and then you pick and choose.
Yeah. So I use, for example, I use hypothesis a lot. So or interpretation of what's being said or what's happening. So I interpret what's happening, and I know that way of being is very much promoted by the psychoanalytic school. So I am quite close to that school, I think. And I was also trained in the psychoanalytic school. And I also know that, for example, the International Coach Federation, so that's a very big association of coaches, they in their competencies, they don't list interpretation or hypothesis. So they don't really like that, or they don't really recommend that. So I suppose I am distinct. I'm different. I'm different from that, and I'm more similar to psychoanalytic coaches, I think, for example.
Oh, that's interesting. So being in the moment, observing what is happening and bringing it into light or into the focus is an approach.
Yes.
Yeah. It makes a lot
and
of sense.
I also wonder, how do you work with groups? Because there's a whole part of group dynamics.
Yes.
We've also studied, and I'm wondering, what is your take on that?
Yes, I studied groups with the Tavistock Institute and Clinic in the Leicester Conference. They have a group analytic program. And I also studied groups with the Institute of Group Analysis, which is another branch of psychoanalysis, let's say, in London. So I'm quite close to that school. And because you're always outnumbered in a group, I think it's a bit more difficult to do the same sort of interventions with groups. So I often take another colleague with me, and we work together to have different roles, maybe in front of a group, where only one of us makes interpretations and the other person sits with the group more supportively, let's say.
What is the distinct difference between team coaching and individual coaching? Is that a fair question?
Well, I already mentioned one thing. So you have this very safe space in, with good, strong containing boundaries in individual coaching. And it's just you and your client. And it feels equal and balanced. With a team, as a professional, you're always outnumbered. So there is lots of things going on. The room is no longer so stable, and there's a lot of things that you miss, that you don't know, that you can't, that maybe you see, you notice, but you can't comment on because the moment is already gone. So it's much richer, and therefore it's almost like the way I look at it is that you're constantly working hard to get into a coaching mindset with a team. So you're constantly being pulled to be the facilitator or to be the outsider. You're constantly pulled in different directions, and only very rarely are you just focusing on, on the topic, on the issues, let's say, because lots of people have different things to say, different things on their mind, more or less engaged, etc. So if you want to then understand that, you need a different kind of psychology as well. So you need different psychological models, as you probably both know, because you're both psychologists. It's very different.
Why would a top management group reach out for a team coaching session or team coaching agreement? Do you have some generic experience about why do they ask for coaching in a group of top managers, or in a board group, for instance?
A lot of teams understand that they need to do business together, and they need to get to agreements together. They make decisions together, and that this is very difficult if they don't get on, or if they don't trust one another, or they don't believe the right people are there, and things like that. So a lot of the work in boards is through the people, and very often the people are not working very well together because they have so much conflict or distrust, competition as well. So I think then very often they look for some outsider who is safe, who can help them to improve those relationships, because often they do see that if the relationships get better, the decisions will also improve, or the pace of decision making will improve.
Do you have an experience that the willingness to ask for team coaching in top management is raising, or is it like it has always been?
No, I think it's growing.
It's growing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's maybe a good way to package our work. So we used to be OD consultants, and that was always a bit difficult to explain. And now we are team coaches, and that's, they feel that's like sports coaching, or it's kind of easier for them to understand that name than the name of OD consultancy. And I think OD consultancy is not growing. No. Team coaching is very much taking over, I think, from that.
So what should be our key persuasive argument that a top management group should invite a coach into the team? What is the key inspirational argument?
To understand their dynamics better, to understand better how they are working together, so that they can perhaps make better use of one another in making decisions, something like that.
When we talk about psychological safety and Amy Edmondson's logic over the years, she has been researching and writing about it the same way you have been writing a lot about coaching and coaching processes, but also about fearlessness. Do you see some kind of a connection with years ago you were curious and occupied with fearlessness in consultancy, maybe also in systems, in organizations, and now we're talking about psychological safety? Do you see a link?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, these are just different words for different, different experiences, and that's why I think if you want a simple language for it, then love over fear, captures everything in our work. So the psychological safety is the feeling of generosity, of sharing, of feeling safe in your space, and all of that is, I associate that with love nowadays more, and it comes out as as you sit together. It comes out automatically. You don't have to work for it, but you do need to sit together. You have to sit down and wait for it almost.
Yeah.
So investing time is almost is more important than getting the right people in the room or getting the right topics on the board or on the agenda. I think taking the time is almost more important in our
being
work.
in the room while taking the time. Yeah.
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That speaks also to me in what I've seen with culture, with much less experience than you, which is all about having those dialogues about the relevant topic, right? It's not even the process. Yes. I mean, it's not, as you said, who, but it's like, do we have the right conversations or not?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do we have a conversation where we can reflect on the conversation itself to make sure that we're having the right conversation? Yeah, that's very important. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering what is at the core of your motivation, and how did you decide to use your time? Because you have only 24 hours.
I think the core of my choice in time is really to be of service, to help, to make things a little bit more bearable for people in organizations. And one thing that really motivates me at the moment is, and I think it's linked to what we've already spoken about, but it's to do with how do we work with power in our organizations? How do we make sure that power does not corrupt? Because what I can see around me is that it always corrupts people who stay in power over time. They become more and more corrupted in many ways. They hang on, they cling to power, they cling to they're greedy about the benefits of power, and they become hubristic about their leadership. They reach beyond what they are responsible for. They try to influence people where they shouldn't be doing that on the basis of their high standing. So I'm very interested in that. I'm very motivated also by what's happening in all the crises in the world, and what you can see in powerful leaders in politics, and how they are struggling at the moment, how we're all struggling with more and more war and crisis, and really a very difficult situation where we all need to help, I think, as we can. And what I noticed is in organizations, we do not see many democracies. So every senior leader is appointed by the leaders above them. But the people who actually know best about the functioning of that leader is the team just below them. And maybe the personal assistant as well, maybe the home family as well. But the people who really have to report and work with this leader most closely, and also where their leadership makes a difference, is below. So these leaders need to be evaluated and appointed from below. We need much more democracy in organizations. And that's a very fundamental flaw in many organizations. And I think we as coaches can come in, if we are invited. We are independent of this autocratic system that is already existing there. So we can speak our truth, and we can help make things a little bit more democratic. So we can, for example, do a 360, or we can say to the leader, you need to listen to that person because they're saying something important now. And you seem to shut them out every time, or you seem to, not want to listen to that voice because it's very difficult for you. It's a challenge. So we can sometimes come in from the side to make things a little bit more democratic. But of course, our power, our influence as consultants or coaches is very restricted. So what I'm thinking a lot about is this, the difference between autocracy and democracy in the world. And you can see that beautifully, which I follow every day is the Russian-Ukraine war, where you see an autocracy attacking a democracy. And the democracy is becoming more and more open, more democratic, even while it's being attacked. And the autocracy is, of course, becoming more and more Stalinist, again, much more kind of autocratic. So it's very interesting to see the meeting of these two systems in the world. And I think you see similar things in organizations. And, I'm quite pessimist because, the Russian model is more the model in our organizations than the Ukraine model or our own Danish beautiful democracy. That is not implemented in many organizations. And that's really what's motivating me at the moment, and also determines how I choose my time and things like that. So I'm very pleased that I can say this now in this interview as well. That makes the interview more worthwhile for me.
When you talk about top management and it becomes too powerful and dangerous, what my experience is as well, that when people in top management get lesser and lesser feedback.
Yes.
They are flattered.
Yes.
They are pleased.
Yes.
They don't get the feedback.
Yes. And they get also multiples of the salaries of the people below, which is unfair because the added value of leadership is often not very big. So it's a very unfair salary difference as well. It's an unfair difference in flattery. All these things I think we need to do something about together, together with them, with the leaders of today. Yeah.
And actually, we found a bit of research that was talking about 360 combined with coaching, right, to make sense of it. And yes, the whole thing about self-order agreement. How do you perceive yourself as a leader? How others perceive you? And then
it's interesting. You perceive yourself as much more capable than your own peers perceive you, if they're honest, and your own
much
followers.
More open-minded.
Yes. But
so
yeah, I often combine 360 type work with my coaching. So I often speak with a few people around leaders. You probably do the same, but I think that's very important to do.
Is there anything, in your reflections and conversations with leaders where you can help them see what you are saying, about those pitfalls of power, of use of power? Is it something that's, typically they would be already familiar with, or is there anything that you can help them see a bit through that?
Yes, that's what my work is very much about, I think. And I do this through interpretation, but I often talk with leaders about how their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. So how they can find in their bright side as a leader, how they can find their shadow side. And I invite them to look at their shadow side a bit more. And that helps often to balance this kind of distortion of their own kind of self-image.